Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. I'm your host, Peter Zablocki, and you're listening to the 11th limited series of the History Shorts podcast. Each weekend this month, I examined some secret or rather less known tale from World War II, or at least as far as historical consensus is concerned. The idea for this series and the specific topics came from the book Top Secret Tales of World War II by William Brewer, published by Castle Books in 2008. This series is brought to you by the Podcast Republic, your ultimate podcast listening app. Discover and subscribe to thousands of podcasts from around the globe, all in one place. Download Podcast Republic now and take your podcast experience to the next level. As always, thank you for continuing to tune in each day and allowing me to tell you a story. If you like the show, the best thing you can do is spread the word to your friends. For more information, please visit www.historyshortspodcast.com. Today, on our last episode of the History Shorts Secret World War II series, Hermann Görtz, World War II's Unluckiest Spy.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Hermann Görtz's life was defined by ambitions constantly undercut by misfortune. Born on the 15th of November of 1890 in Lübeck, Germany, Gortz was intelligent, multilingual, and highly educated, earning a doctorate in international law after World War I. A decorated officer during the First World War, he had served as a reconnaissance pilot, earning the Iron Cross First Class for his daring missions over the Eastern Front. His background and skills should have made him an ideal candidate for Germany's espionage efforts during the Second World War. Yet, Görtz's story is not one of triumph, but rather a series of miscalculations, blunders, and unlucky breaks that undermined almost every mission he ever undertook. Görtz's first failure as a spy occurred years before Germany entered the Second World War, during the Broadstairs Incident of 1935-1936. Tasked by Abwehr to gather intelligence on the RAF Manston Air Base in Kent, he traveled to Britain under the guise of researching a book about the Royal Air Force history. Renting a house with his secretary, Marianne Emig, Görtz ingratiated himself with an unsuspecting British airman, Kenneth Lewis, from whom he obtained sketches and documents related to RAF operations. But Görtz's undoing came not from the British counterintelligence services, but from an absurdly trivial misunderstanding. His landlady, Mrs. Johnson, discovered handwritten notes referencing bicycle combinations among his belongings and misinterpreting the phrase as a coded message. She then alerted the police. Unfortunately for Görtz, these really were just dimensions of an actual bicycle and had nothing to do with any espionage. Upon searching his possessions, authorities uncovered Lewis's sketches and other sensitive materials. Görtz was arrested upon returning from a brief trip to Hamburg, charged under the Official Secrets Act, and he was sentenced to 4 years in Maidstone prison, and became infamous as one of the few German spies publicly exposed in Britain before the war began. The episode revealed a recurring pattern. Görtz's intelligence work relied on risky improvisations rather than carefully layered tradecraft. Even when he secured valuable information, his lack of operational security repeatedly betrayed him. Despite this embarrassment, the Abwehr saw value in Görtz's experience, especially his connections to Ireland. He had visited the country in 1927 and developed sympathy for Irish Republicans opposed to British rule. By 1940, Berlin envisioned a plan to exploit these connections, using the Irish Republican Army IRA as a proxy to destabilize Britain's control of Northern Ireland and divert resources from the main European fronts. Under Operation Minnow, Görtz parachuted into Ireland on May 5, 1940, landing in County Meath. The operation unraveled almost immediately. During the jump, he lost or destroyed much of his equipment, including his radio transmitter and parachute, leaving him without reliable communications. Carrying a conspicuous suitcase packed with 20,000 pounds in cash and an assortment of coded documents, he thus trekked across the countryside attempting to make contact with IRA leadership. What Gortz failed to anticipate was that the IRA, fractured and poorly organized, was in no position to launch coordinated sabotage campaigns. He first approached Stephen Hayes, the IRA's chief of staff and president of Berlin's expectations of a massive uprising supported by German arms. Hayes, however, lacked operational control over his fragmented organization, and the IRA's resources were stretched thin following a disastrous bombing campaign in Britain the year before. Gortz's belief that he could direct the IRA as a disciplined partner proved fatally naive. At the heart of Gortz's Irish mission was Plan Kathleen, a proposal by the IRA envisioning German paratroopers landing in Northern Ireland while IRA forces struck from the south. The plan was not really well thought out, logistically unrealistic, and based on fantastical assumptions about German resources. Nevertheless, Gortz forwarded the proposal to Berlin, but German intelligence viewed it skeptically, recognizing the IRA's limited capabilities. His role became further muddled as the Abwehr and the SS clashed over strategy, leaving him isolated and without clear directives while in Ireland. While Gortz imagined himself as the architect of this grand Irish insurrection, in reality, his handlers in Berlin had very little confidence in his plans, and thus provided minimal support. Even beyond strategic misjudgments, Gortz demonstrated striking lapses in basic tradecraft. He moved between safe houses in different cities, frequently carrying sensitive documents and cash on his person rather than securing them somewhere else. He made no attempt to change his appearance and often traveled without reliable aliases. On one occasion, his conspicuous presence in public drew the attention of Gardaí, who were already weary of German agents operating on Irish soil. Gortz also alienated several IRA members by issuing contradictory instructions and failing to appreciate the political nuances of Irish neutrality. While Irish Republicans sought independence from Britain, many had very little interest in actively serving Germans, particularly when collaboration risked undermining Ireland's precarious diplomatic position. His transmitter failure early in the mission compounded all these issues. Cut off from Berlin, Gortz relied entirely on verbal agreements and unsecured messengers, exposing his network to easy compromise. Unlike other German espionage efforts in Europe, which benefited from established Abwehr infrastructure, Operation Mai Now depended almost entirely on Gortz's personal resourcefulness, and his constant bad luck meant that his resourcefulness was rarely enough. By late 1941, Irish authorities had grown increasingly suspicious of his activities. On November 27, 1941, Gardaí raided a safe house in Dublin, arresting Gortz alongside several IRA collaborators. He was initially held in local prison before being transferred to a larger prison where he remained interned for the remainder of the war. His internment reflected another cruel irony of his career. Gortz had been dispatched to Ireland with the expectation of orchestrating sabotage and rebellion, but spent most of the war as a passive detainee. By 1943, his original network had collapsed. His funds were all seized, and his reports to Berlin seized entirely. He became a symbol of Germany's broader failure to mobilize effective resistance within the British Isles. When World War II ended in 1945, Gortz remained in Ireland, hoping to avoid extraction to Britain, where he feared severe punishment for his pre-war espionage. He became secretary of the Save the German Children Society, attempting to rebuild his life quietly. However, his reprieve was short-lived. In 1947, the Irish government issued a deportation order, planning to return him to occupied Germany. Facing the humiliation of deportation and fearing prosecution for his role in Nazi operations, although they all failed, Gortz took his own life on May 23, 1947, inside the alien's office at Dublin Castle, ingesting a cyanide capsule he had carried for years. He was initially buried at Dean's Grange Cemetery under a swastika-draped coffin, attended by Irish sympathizers, including notable IRA veteran Dan Breen. In 1974, his remains were transferred to the German military cemetery in County Wicklow. In the end, Gortz's espionage career offers a striking illustration of how poor planning, bad judgment, and misfortune can converge in wartime intelligence operations. Each mission he undertook was compromised by avoidable blunders, strained relationships, and improbable coincidences. From his arrest in Britain over bicycle combinations, to his parachute landing in Ireland without functioning communications, to his estranglement with the divided IRA, his work seemed cursed from the outset. Historians have noted that Gortz operated at the intersection of German overconfidence and local realities they failed to grasp. Berlin's belief that Irish republicanism could be weaponized against Britain ignored Ireland's internal divisions, its neutral stance, and its strategic vulnerabilities. At the same time, Gortz lacked the operational discipline to adapt to unpredictable conditions. Thanks for listening.